your dad was the first beatboxer known to break the I don't know whatever.
Great grandpa.
Oh
Great
yeah,
grandpa.
well sorry, way back.
Yeah.
Wait, great grandma?
Beatbox and harpsichord.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Hey, welcome to the Sinner and Saint podcast. Ben and Patrick, back at you. Coming in hot. Good to be with you today, and we're glad you tuned in. This is a place where we explore the best and the worst of our lives. Hope you're ready for this. Buckle up. It's gonna get nasty today. It's gonna get ugly.
Okay.
Yeah. We're getting deep. We're getting deep into the sinner narrative of our lives.
We're gonna get ugly early.
Ugly early, and I know who's gonna help us with that.
Where you at?
Our good friend Eddie.
Where you at?
Watch himself a moment.
3 or 4.
Yeah,
I
gotta go see this. What's happening here? Which is new. We've got a few of these episodes out on video.
We do.
Launch it. What do we got?
Today we're drinking just whiskey today.
What?
I found this on my bar. So it was already there.
It was there.
I
didn't know what to do with it.
And I thought, oh my gosh, that's a whiskey Patrick would really like, because you like rum. So this is Bardstown bourbon that has been aged in Plantation Rum barrels.
Sponsor, yay!
And so, yeah, it has been aged in Plantation Rum barrels.
And
so I have that kind of rum.
I had a sample of this at the tour back in January.
And now you got a whole kind of glass.
They didn't have this available to us.
So there's that. That's delightful.
You gotta roll around. You gotta check its legs.
You gotta do the Kentucky swirl.
Kentucky swirl. You gotta hit all the taste buds on the tongue.
Around.
Yep.
So welcome into episode 31.
That's a special treat. Yeah, we started video. If you haven't found us over on YouTube, you can also watch those videos on Spotify.
Or you can not watch them at all.
That's true. We have a couple of faces that are built for radio and podcasting, not the Hollywood. Wow! We're doing the wow! I think this shirt's coming off, buddy.
You've been working.
What did you do before we got on behind the camera?
It's been hiding. I found out where it's been hiding.
Oh boy, I'm going to be the one keeping Ben in mind, which is not often the case.
I get to bury an electrical cable later today. That should be a good time. We'll see how that goes.
Say more. What is this? What are you doing?
Nope. That's all
That's
you need to know.
That's it. That's what Weekend Ben does.
Weekend Ben drinks and plays with fire.
Well, I hope you're safe.
We recently switched our cable. Let me tell you about this. This is first world male problem. I don't like technology. We've talked about this before. If you're new to the program, I don't like technology. That's engulfing our lives. Yes, I hate it. I think social media is really toxic. I've got a lot of opinions about technology. There is nothing that can make me lose my temper quicker than just a freaking thing doesn't work. The internet's gone out. Because here's my thing. If you punch a hole in drywall, I know exactly how to fix it. I'm super confident. I know exactly how to fix it. If you break a chair, I know exactly how to fix it. If my motorcycle's broken, I know exactly how to fix it. So I have confidence in all these abilities to rectify problems, except for technology. And if my internet goes out, I was no. I have no idea what to do. So Super Bowl Sunday, I had all thrown right under the bus.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Get big Comcast.
Yeah, you're the worst.
In fact, our Comcast password for years was Comcast.1. So my cable goes out on Super Bowl Sunday for 4 to 6 hours. Worst. And I'm like,
that's not good.
Yeah, I'm losing it, man.
You call your friends and see who's hosting the party, and they're like,
hey. I was sick that day.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was supposed to come to your house.
Yeah, you bailed on me.
And I was sick, and I was like, my COVID test was negative. I'm not getting people sick, so I need to stay home. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, man. The following Sunday, cable goes out for 4 to 6 hours. Then Tuesday night, then Wednesday night, then doesn't work at all on Thursday. And I'm like, we're done. We're done with this. So we got them out to the house, and they're like, yeah, this is supposed to be working like 99%, but my reader says it's less than 40. And then 3 hours later, they're like, yeah, the cable's melted. We don't know why. So we're just like on the inside, it's all melted. So you're not getting a good connection. So we're going to replace that line. And I'm like, okay. So they replaced the line. Meanwhile, we're just like, AT&T, what's the saying? AT&T was just like, it's whiny.
Whoa,
cell phone plan. I'm like, I switched to AT&T
really?
phone because I was like, it just saved so much money.
Yeah. We're AT&T.
So,
we found it to be much better than Comcast.
Yeah.
Although Verizon Home Hub is pretty good.
Well, if they can save me money, that's
$50 a month, guaranteed for 3 years. I'm like, that's pretty cheap.
For a 5-year contract?
Well, my son games a lot, and I'm not sure he can handle the games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that aspect. So we'll probably stick with Apple for a while, and then maybe we'll, or AT&T, and then we'll switch over.
Yeah, so the only caveat to that was AT&T, when they ran in the fiber line, they don't have a contractor that comes and buries it. Because normally, I guess they run it up. Like they want to run it from the pole to your house.
Right.
And I mean, you've been in my backyard. That's Tree City, man. And I'm like, no. And like, even when he's running it, there's if you're on video, it's not exaggerating, this big around limb that was probably 15 to 20 feet long that had fallen.
Okay. And
I'm like, no, man, that crap happened. So like, you're not going to run this high anywhere, like, because it's going to come down. So yeah, this afternoon it rained here yesterday a lot.
A ton.
So
man, it was Lake City.
Yeah, my ground should be good and soft, and the people have already come out and marked where the other lines and stuff are. So yeah, I'm just gonna.
It's important. Got to do
put
that. 411.
Yes.
Get your ground utilities 811.
411 was the old information.
Where did Vanilla Ice live?
818 Detroit Avenue.
Detroit Avenue! Girls are hot wearing less than bikini. Rock man lover, driving Lamborghini, jealous, because I'm out getting mine. Shades of the day, with the vanilla. Come on, man.
No, I don't know any of those words. That's incredible. At one point, I remember that.
You're not Vanilla Ice.
I'm vanilla something.
Vanilla something. Vanilla.
So you had some things you wanted to discuss today. You said this was going to get ugly.
Well, we're just. I've been.
Do you want to back out of it?
No. I've been digging into the 7 deadly sins.
Okay.
They've always fascinated me. They're not a biblical category. Okay. So they come from Dante's Inferno. Okay. Is where they come from. They're philosophized about that. Scripture holds the some. I mean, they're all present in Scripture, but they're not quite, like, you're not going to find a space where you're like, these are the 7 deadly sins. Okay. There's a place in, I believe, the Proverbs where it says these are the things that the Lord hates. Okay. And a couple of them are captured there. Okay. In that list of 7, but I think 2 or 3 of those are repeated in the list. Like, if you make a list of things and you repeat 2 or 3 things in the list, you're like, oh, that you really mean something there, right? Which is kind of cool anyway. In Hebrew language, there's not adjectives. Okay. In the Hebrew language, so
now for those who might not know at home, what's an adjective?
It's a word that describes a noun. Oh. Okay. So like a happy gnome. Happy is the adjective. Gnome is there. Gnome is the noun of that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Wow.
That's our
remember
first.
When we used to.
It's been a long time since we've had a live. You want to take that on the air?
No. Oh, no, not this one. Ooh, remember when we used to go through and do a checklist of like, all right, phone's muted. Yeah, we got lazy.
I'm almost positive my phone's not on airplane mode right now, so any phone comes through. And we're recording this on a busy soccer morning, so there might be a lot of interruptions.
All sorts of things will happen.
So an adjective, you say, is a descriptive word.
Yes.
And the Hebrew language had none of them.
They don't have that. So when they want to put emphasis on something, they just say it twice. So when you have Jesus, who's called the King of Kings, that's a Hebrew phrase, Lord of Lords, right? They're like, they're not just repeating themselves. That's how they use adjectives. So they're like, that would be like, oh, he's the best king. Like, if you double down on that, like, this is the podcast of podcasts.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't.
don't like that.
Yeah.
We are.
We'll call it out.
Yeah, that's it.
Get bent, Joe
Unless
Rogan.
somebody else has said it, we're saying it.
Yeah, we're the podcast of podcasts.
Yeah, take that.
And I don't have an adjective or descriptive word to quantify the noun, so we're the podcast of podcasts. I said it twice.
Take that. Take that. Ooh, come on. So yeah, that's when Victor does that, it's what they're saying. It's like, oh, this is the best. This is, or the worst, right? You could be like, this is the.
So you're saying then when the seven deadly sins were introduced in some of them were doubled up. So it
doubled up,
gave them kind of more, or were the seven the ones that were doubled up and there were additional sins?
No. There were 3 or 4 that were listed. A couple of them were doubled.
Okay.
Dante's Inferno, as he goes through the story, which is Dante's not the author of that. It's an Italian guy, and I'm blanking on his name because of
Carlo Enchilada.
Yep, it's him. So when he writes that, like that's where we get, and most of our theology on hell comes from there. It doesn't come from Scripture. So we have to understand that we have a very cultural view of hell and heaven that doesn't come from Scripture in the Bible. We get a very different story of Scripture in the Bible when we read that stuff.
Yeah.
But I've been digging into the 7 deadly sins because I'm like,
they are murder.
But no.
Wait, wrath is one.
Wrath, or rage, or anger. Gluttony, envy. Greed or avarice.
Greed. Yeah, that's on there. That's 4.
Pride. That'd be envy.
Okay. Pride. Murder's not one.
Lust.
No, that's
murder's not a sin. Rage, it's the rage and anger.
Lust and
slothfulness.
Getting all lazy.
Yeah, so I started digging into greed and anger, both in philosophy, in Buddhism, within Christianity. Those are kind of seen as kind of the stepping off point of where we get into our worst. And anger is just such a we relate to anger so much. We all can try to get that for whatever reason. Our table doesn't work on Monday.
Stay out of my way.
My fries at Ruby Tuesdays came out cold. Whatever. Like
we lost to IU at home.
Twice. Boy, what the
they
world?
Lost to IU twice, but they only lost once at Mackey. Here's the recap of my wife to her father. Hey, did you guys watch the game last night? She goes, I watched the game quietly while someone I lived with yelled at the television.
Yelled.
I was like,
Yeah, it was an infuriating game. We caught it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of opinions about that, but we're talking about rage or wrath, or we're talking about other things. Yeah, so when cable goes out on Super Bowl Sunday, I am...
You step into a 7 deadly... You're like, let me take on my 7 deadly. And there's 7 virtues that complement those or work in there. You okay there?
We talked earlier.
Yes.
I washed my hands in your kitchen.
Yeah.
You have a very fragrant
hand soap. Is it throwing off your bourbon?
When you're drinking this and smelling this, that's an assault on the senses. So I'm sorry, I'm like a drunk puppy over here. So 7 deadly sins.
Yeah. So I'm just getting into it, and I find it pretty fascinating because of how emotions work and how we get there. And I always have this when I work with in my coaching. One of the things I say is our emotions. We often put them in the driver's seat, and they're better than gas tanks.
Oh yeah.
And so emotions are erratic, not irrational. They're erratic. Both whether they're good or bad emotions.
Yeah.
They can come on instantly. They can change. They can make us think or go in erratic directions. And if it's in the driver's seat, boy, an erratic driver is terrifying at best, if not unsafe. But if we can recognize and see the emotion, then we can put it in the gas tank. And if we put it in the gas tank, then we can actually take the journey through the emotion and say, okay, what is this seated in? So I can get to the core of like what are the narratives I'm working with, what are the threats that I feel are upon me in my life, and then from there, once I begin to get a glimpse of the landscape, then I can start to process and see, okay, how do I use this emotion to where I want to go. So it's a very proactive as opposed to reactive. Like reactive is fear based. It lets time be its guide that pushes it, and it drives that way. Where proactive says I'm seated in values. I'm going to go back to what are the values that are necessary for me. I'm going to deal and lean into truth and what is really happening or feeling, and I'm not pushed by time. I'm pushed by what I see as truth or what is real and valuable in my life. And so, as I've been digging into these things, I'm still working. I'm not there yet, obviously, but just in that space. I mean, obviously, if anybody can get there, we'd have a quick PowerPoint or whatever of like, here's how to process these things.
Sure. Here's how to do better.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way because we're complicated beings. And we have thoughts, we have emotions, we have relationships. All those things complicate that process.
Oh, Karen.
Yeah. But one of the things that it said as I was reading this is it's easy for me to tell my hand to pick up this drink and yum,
delicious,
to enjoy it. But the mind struggles to control the mind. And so when I try to convince my mind to not think of something or to think of something proactively, so if you go that route, it gets muddled. And it gets muddled because of where our will is. And so our will, this is fascinating, and if you don't find it fascinating, you should probably go find another podcast. But
see you guys.
Thanks for
No, you keep going.
But I know you.
Keep going. You find this fascinating. I'm just gonna.
I know you find this fascinating. I know. Whatever.
Yeah, I'll be over in a minute.
Here, I hate you.
Good.
Hurts my heart. But it says our mind can't struggles to control our mind, and ultimately it's because our will is impacted. So what does our will want, or what is our intention? So if you think of what's the intention of what we're going for, and it says when we try to change. So when we try to instill, think of New Year's resolutions or wanting to start a new habit, it's our habits that keep us locked in and support our will, which is kind of just think of that as your basic standard mode of operation, right? This is the standard way that we go through life and we operate. But when you try to instill a different will, what you're trying to do is instill another set of practices or habits.
Sure.
And your mind isn't like, well, that's not easy. That's not the easy thing, because our mind operates in the survivalist mode. Go back to our cavemen ancestors, where they're just trying to survive. How do I survive? What is necessary? And if I'm going to survive, I need simple and easy and accessible.
You need AT&T, not Comcast.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how you survive.
I need it to be simple, and things that are complicated, things that I have to put mental energy around, that's a harder stress, and it exhausts me more, and it takes longer for me to get to that point, and so I evade it. And so anger is an instinctual survival mode. But as we've developed, and the culture around us has developed, we haven't worked on building the habits that support how do we change just being reactive to that state.
Because we live in, at least today's society, we live in an instant gratification universe where everything is me-centric.
And very fast.
Yeah. And so Amazon Prime's awesome. Yeah. Because I don't have to wait on it for 2.5 weeks. I can get it tomorrow. I can get it today.
Like, I bought a networking cable on Amazon because I knew I could get it before I had a chance to actually go to the store and purchase it. Like,
isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
But like that.
Incredibly
yeah,
sad.
because it's made us into a culture, a society of this is all about me and what I want and what I get. Yeah. And so like there are, I think, very few people, and we've talked about it on here before, but if you're new to the podcast, like I don't think a lot of people really do that self-challenging, that self-preservation, that not self-preservation, that self-betterment. So like, how do I make my mind be better so the next time a challenge arises, I can tackle it, I can face it better, I can do it with more professionalism, with more kindness, with more intellect. I can see the way that this can bring out the worst of me, and I don't want to be that person, so I'm not going to let the lady at Popeyes who's yelling at my kid, telling her that, hey, you're not gonna get XYZ because we're out of chicken, but they get escalated. No, these are. I mean, you see it all over the internet. Like these people who are yelling at strangers, and it's like, at what point was your fast food order so demanding that you had to not only make a jerk out of yourself, but then everybody's recording everything all the time. So that's going to go viral because we live in a TikTok world where why would I go out and talk to somebody? I'd rather just live on my phone because I can connect with people that way. And so I think because of this high, fast-paced, instant gratification, need-centric narrative that we've all bought into, I bought into it. Not a lot of people, I think, have those conversations like you're having with themselves, where they say, man, that situation wasn't good, and gosh, I could be better. How can I be better in that situation? I need to dial it back and distill this down to what was the cause and effect of my emotion in this situation that let me handle it poorly? And what can I put in place mentally to try and help myself understand, to recognize that sooner, so next time I can take a different path towards harmony, and I can treat this with kindness or respect or whatever it is. It doesn't become I'm just going to be a jerk because this is all about me. And it's like,
Yeah, which is, as I was reading, that whole point, like our culture is built around this instant gratification and getting to that place. And in this, they say that's the source of greed. And so we have to be really careful. They say if you want to beware of your sins, you actually want to live into the virtues of life. You have to recognize that instant gratification is dangerous to that core of whatever it is, soul or ethos or spirit, depending on the tradition and the vernacular they use.
Yeah.
And so they say when you want to satisfy the soul instantly, and you're driven by what they call as passion, desire, or satisfaction, that then becomes your ultimate, and I would say this is what our culture says is happiness. When your desire is to be happy and that's your ultimate goal and drive in life, that becomes the hotbed for which the seven deadly sins then arise. Because you're not interested. One, your satisfaction is the desire and the appetite that you have to feed. And when that's the first appetite that you're addressing, then you're willing to put everything else aside for the sake of your happiness. And so Dallas Willard, who I've talked about at other times, he says,
she's delightful.
Him, he's from Missouri, and he's no longer around. So God bless you, Dallas. But Dallas said the soul has it has natural appetites. That our souls are built with these appetites that can be met in natural ways, but they can be distorted, which is both a Judeo-Christian mindset. I would say is also very present in Judaism. Those are the ones I study. I'm not saying it's not present in others. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with. And so but if we actually find the simple ways that our soul can be fed. So when you look at natural desire, we think, well, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. But actually, what your soul wants is to feel safe and secure. And so if you recognize, if you can step back in your life and assess it and say, okay, my life is safe and secure. I've got plenty to eat, particularly Westerners, right? We have plenty to eat. We have, the majority of us have housing. We have ability to make more income. If we're honest about who we are and where we are, there's more that is present in that place that keeps a life without lack at bay. But the problem is we want an appetite for more. And that's where we would say greed and avarice and envy and gluttony, all that becomes those all seep in. They sneak in without us even realizing it because we don't realize what's guiding us. And so the idea is that our souls have very simple appetites. But when that appetite is not met with those simple things, it becomes distorted and seeks something that is bigger and grander than what was intended. And when our soul is met with its basic appetite of what it's searching for, then our souls are at rest. Or we're at peace and nirvana with the world.
And I want to ask you about that. Like individually, if you're willing to share, what is your soul's appetite?
So it's different things. So right when I in a marriage relationship, and this is important. We were talking recently with some friends about the number of sexless marriages that are out there. And I would attest that those are sinful marriages, because sex is one of those key factors of a marriage relationship that makes it whole. That's the one thing, and I ask this of when I help with marital counseling, whether it's pre, current, or post. I always say, what's the one thing that would break this? And they all say a break in fidelity, right? If they were to have an affair, that would ruin my trust. And so they're while sex should not be, we need to certainly remove. Sex should be this edifying thing. There's a lot of shame in it in our culture, but it works best in a certain way. And sex particularly is one of those things that you're like, if this is broken within a marriage, and not all marriages, there's certainly mindsets and viewpoints that say we have an open marriage or whatever the case may be. But what I would say is there's your soul, particularly when it comes in regards to sex, and maybe this is in the construct of the Western world, is that I need to be vulnerable, I need to be transparent, I need to be seen. There's a physicality that needs to be met there. And the appetite of that is that you are accepted as you are. And because of all the vulnerabilities that come within a sexual relationship. And if you can meet those securities, it'll actually make your sex life more whole. Not that you say your sex life isn't necessary, but your sex life becomes more whole, it becomes more, and that's one small aspect, right? So when it comes to, we'll take envy, right? Envy is.
Hold on that, because that was
okay.
We're getting
okay,
off.
sorry.
We're getting off. Like, what is you directly? Like, what is your soul's appetite?
I think they're all the same. I think every soul is built the same. I think it's built with. I think we have different capacities of how that appetite looks like, but I think our souls are all crafted with seeking the same appetite to be met.
Okay.
With unique nuances based on our experiences and our stories, in the past that we're healing and restoring in our life.
Okay. I disagree with that. I think it's and not to put words in your mouth, but that feels like a generalization that we're all essentially seeking the same thing, and I don't think that's true. I don't think we are all seeking the same thing out of life.
Okay. Say more.
There's a primal instinct to just survive. So I mean, and I don't think it's the fight or flight instinct. That's somebody scares you and you punch them or you run. But like, if I put a pillow over your face, you're gonna fight for life. Sure, I will as well. Every human will. Yeah. That's your primal instinct to fight for life. So I think we have these instincts that are ingrained in us that are shared amongst the human species. But I think when it comes to the individual cultivation of your soul and what your soul's appetite is, that's cultural background, that's diversity, that's how you were brought up, that's what you find value and joy in. So like you don't like fishing,
right? But like
fishing feeds my soul.
Right. That
solitude of being alone in nature is my soul. That's part of my soul's appetite.
Right. So that's why I'd say you just said it, right? The solitude is the thing that satisfies your soul.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you find that solitude through fishing. So that's where there's the simple appetite of solitude, whatever, and that's why I'd encourage you to unpack, like, what is it in fishing that helps you to realize and validate yourself as a human existing in this world.
It's actually not just fishing. When you were describing this, I asked myself, like, what is my soul's appetite?
Yeah. Did you have an answer?
Very first word was solitude.
Okay.
So solitude isn't just me fishing. Like we talked earlier, I'm gonna bury that cable today. I'm gonna do it alone. I'm good with that. Like I can go into the garage and organize my garage. That's solitude. I'm good with that. I can sit on the couch and listen to jazz and do the crossword. That all of those different things of me investing in myself and investing in that solitude, I know is important because those are the things I need to nurture myself to be able to give to others. We've talked before about Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and all that. Yep. Like, I'm right on that line of introvert extrovert. And the older I get, the more introverted I get.
Yeah.
And I understand that does take more for me to be on for other people. And I can do it. But the tank runs empty on all of us. Sure. And so we get spent emotionally because we're investing in others. And, you know, if my wife has a really emotionally high octane week, I know that I have to cut certain social events because I just won't have it in me to be able to even have happy hour with my neighbor.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I just can't do it today. I need to not be needed for 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I have a very needy work life. And so people need things of me. And so it means, one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten is a very close friend of mine said, I love our friendship because you don't need anything from me. Mm-hmm. He's like, you don't ask anything from me. You don't need anything from me. You just genuinely want to spend time with me because we click. I'm like, yeah. And I'll be honest, I wish every single relationship was like that.
Sure.
Because wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
But no, solitude was the chief thing that came to my mind. And there are other things. Like you're talking about sex. Yes, I do need to have sex. And there are other things that fill my soul. But for me, that number one thing is rebuilding into myself. And it is. I challenge myself on a daily basis because I still screw up. Yeah. I mean, I screw up all the time. But it's like, man, that sucks. So I'll I kind of like a data engineer would do. I tear it down, I look for bugs, beta test it, fix it, run it again. Okay, what do you do? Yeah. Was the second time better? Okay, cool. Yeah, put it back in production. And I'm not a data scientist. It's just that makes sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
So, but like looking at it from that analytical perspective, I just don't understand people who don't constantly challenge themselves to be better.
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes, so again, go back to the survival instinct. Solitude is one of those. I think solitude is a practice that every person, if they were to enter into it, is a restorative practice. Mm-hmm. We see that Jesus did this, Buddha did this. Like meditation is a practice that's across most religions that are healthy. I don't know if flying spaghetti monster religion practices meditation, but it's an actual religion. Yes.
Flying spaghetti monster?
Yes.
Like from True Detective, the spaghetti monster?
I'll let you look it up. So yeah, it's out there, identified as a true religion.
Okay. Guys on we're gonna split more hairs.
But solitude, I would say, is a basic practice that brings us back into ourselves because it removes all the other constraints and pressures of survival that are out there. When I'm in solitude, I'm not trying to appease my neighbor. I'm looking at my core self, and I'm looking at how that relationship looks like with God or the world or the universe or how, whatever the language is that your vernacular uses. And there's a lot of similarities there. And that's restorative because it says, okay, what do I need here? Sure. What value do I have? But we have to understand that solitude, for some personalities, and I think we've talked about this before, there are downward and upward streams of practices that bring us back to alignment in our soul. And so the downward stream practices are the ones where I can just float, and the river's going to take me, and it's easy for me. So there are certain personalities that are solitude. They're like, yes, solitude is easy for me, particularly introverts. Solitude is restorative. They're good. They see that. But there are others, extroverts, that see solitude as a challenge. It's a hard practice in my life to step into. It may be restorative, but it's not natural for me. It's not easy. That doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It means you have to build the capacity, just like working out, right? If I'm going to go hit the gym and lift weights 3 days a week, like if I go hard the first day, I'm not going to move the rest of the week. Yeah, but if I slowly ramp that up and build and train my muscles in a way that they understand and my body can receive that, I may be sore a little bit, but within 2 days I'm ready to go back in and hit a different muscle group or the same muscle group, depending on how hard I've worked it. And so it takes effort. Yeah. And you may need to be more intentional, but it's still restorative for you yourself. And so I would say there are some of these core practices that restore all of our souls. Some of those practices are easier for others than the next person.
Sure. I also think too, though, that there are outside influences that change the way you think about that. So, for instance, take you and I.
Yeah.
You and I, you're a man of God. You have a calling to be a pastor. You've met that calling. You've served your community and your faith, your church, and all of that for a couple decades. Your soul has a prescriptive end. Like you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but based on modern religion, you would ascend to heaven or you would descend to hell at the end of all this.
Sure.
And that's organized religion as a whole, not you specifically. So, whereas like I don't believe in an afterlife, I believe in the possibility of a higher power, but I believe in the possibility of aliens and more people.
Right.
So
I believe in the possibility. I mean, what?
too.
I mean, we're splitting hairs.
Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, me too. But like, so for me, my soul, I'm not looking at my soul as what can happen next. I'm always looking at what is now. I don't believe in higher powers of the universe. I don't believe in the mythological gods or anything like that. So I think when we look at what feeds our soul, like, I know I have family members who are religious, and the fellowship, man, that feeds them. Like the going to church and connecting and having intellectual debates about the Bible, like, fuels them. And I'm like, well, hell, I have that with you.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I have that with you. It doesn't matter what happens to my soul when I die.
Yeah.
Like, I think I just go back to bed. Well, actually, I get spread and turn one at the Speedway, but anyway. But like, I don't believe in a metaphoric soul that moves on. And I think a lot of us want to build into what we've been taught. Like, I grew up religious, and I grew up believing that I had to lead a good life so that my soul could ascend to heaven if I wanted to have everlasting life.
Sure.
And that's great. Like, that's great. I just don't believe it anymore. But it cultivated my mindset as a young man. It was a positive thing because I was striving to do better. I was striving to do better because I wanted to go to heaven, not because I wanted to do better.
Yeah. So most of us, I mean, most of us in our view of religion is motivated by fear, right? The motivation is not so much to get into heaven, but to not be in hell.
Right.
And so I'm willing to do whatever I need to avoid this place. And I would say that's destructive to our souls. I think that's what Jesus comes. So I don't hold to traditional views of heaven and hell. I tend to stick to what we honestly see in Scripture, which is a whole other podcast discussion, or not a podcast for this. I don't know. But what Jesus,
we can talk about it over there.
Yeah, but what Jesus says is the actual fulfillment in life that brings the life after life happens now, not in the hereafter. And so that, and he says the kingdom of God, which is talking about the rule or the reign of God, is at hand, which he's saying is present. You reach out and grab it, which means it matters now, not for after when you're gone.
Not your insurance policy.
Right. It's not your insurance policy, but it should matter now. And so you live in these ways. And he says, nobody gets to the Father. You know, the key statement in John where he says, nobody gets to the Father unless they come through me. I am the way, the truth, and life. And the way, the truth, and life is what was called, what Jews believe is the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Yeah. And he's saying, no, I embody that. And so if you want to actually look what it looks like, and he's using this combination of oh boy, when you really took this. I love it. I love it. I don't know if listeners love it. I don't know if you love it. I love it. But Jesus is saying, I'm taking this Jewish language and I'm gonna take this Roman language, where Roman would say, I'm king of the kings, and Jesus would say, actually, I'm king of the kings. I'm like he says, oh, you're saying this, Caesar, but actually that's me. And if you were an ambassador of Caesar, you would go out to the outside communities of your nation, and you would say, the only way to Caesar is through me, for Caesar is the way of life, right? Which essentially was this: either you bend your knee to Caesar or you die. And Jesus shows up and he says, actually, I'm the way of life, and you don't have to, if you take up the cross and follow me. So he says you have to die, but he's saying you have to suffer for the sake of others in order for you to actually experience what life has to offer you, to align your soul with the way it's meant to be. You're laughing. I'm curious.
No, I'm so sorry. That's why only the video people saw it. None of the audio people got that. Because I'm going to repeat your sentence.
Okay.
The way I heard it.
Okay.
The only way to see her is through Jesus. So
there are those people out there.
Every young Christian should say to his girlfriend's dad,
do not.
The only way to see her.
No. No. There's plenty of
and that's what I heard, and I couldn't not laugh. And there's that 12-year-old boy.
I would say that is the corruption of the institution of church that's happening in mega churches, and I would say even
Catholic,
Roman Catholic religion.
Irish, you say?
Yeah,
Irish.
right, yeah. That's a good drink. But no, Jesus isn't. He doesn't. You don't see him in any way saying, "Hey, you need to accept me as your Lord and Savior, so that you can get to heaven." He doesn't. He doesn't.
But that's what's taught.
But
right?
that's exactly what's taught.
That's what we learned.
The fear-based. And if you get into what Jesus says, his teachings really align with Socrates and Greek philosophy, and his teachings really align with the teachings of the Buddhists. And you have a lot of similarity in there in three different cultures and viewpoints of life where there's a lot of alignment. And I would just invite you to step into that place in a curious way that says, okay, well then what does that mean for what does life look like now and today? And that what do the Greek philosophers, what does this Judeo-Christian prophet or teacher offer, Messiah, if you will, within a Christian circle, and what does this Buddhist religion offer us for what a good life looks like? And I would say there's more alignment than not across those viewpoints.
No, and I would agree with that because I've done that, and I've looked into all three of those avenues as far as trying to self-educate on what they are, what they mean, what they're teaching.
So I guess I used to be a pastor after this.
No. Well, you had a good run. Sabbatical, you say.
I'm going to check out those flying spaghetti monsters and see what kind of rules are.
I mean, what's the double letter in there? I've looked into those avenues, and I casually read philosophy and things like that just because it's interesting to me. And my wife is intrigued by the Buddhist culture and things like that. We have some Buddhas in our house, not because I invited them in, they just showed up, and I was like, that's just fine. We also have
I feel like I fit better the image of Buddha than I do as Christ. Fat Buddha, like that's my jam right there.
I think because Buddha loves barbecue, obviously. So that's the name of this episode, Buddha loves barbecue. He didn't get fat by eating.
Is that a country song? Buddha loves barbecue.
Buddha loves barbecue. I saw him in the bar. He was eating brisket for a land away. But no, I think it's interesting. The problem in American culture has become it's a terribly graphic analogy, but it fits, right? Like religion's like a penis. If you're proud of yours, that's great. You start waving in my face, we got problems. And so there's become this stigma about organized Christianity that is like, it's just, there's this toxic culture around it, right? Had you never heard that?
I've never heard, I don't know if I want to hear it.
Live on air, guys, you heard it for the first time. And if you're proud of yours, that's great. I think there's an evangelical spirit to spreading it around. There's organized Christianity. And
I think anything, there's a place in Kings, and we got a couple minutes left, but we're going to wrap this up. There's a place in Kings where the people of Israel want a king. And they cry out to God, and they cry out to Samuel, who is the prophet, who is kind of helping to guide them in their spiritual journey. And they're like, we want a king, we want a king. And Samuel's like, no, you don't. You're like, all you need is God. And God steps in the narrative and says, give them a king. It's okay for them to have a king. They want a king like the other nations have kings. Give them a king. Yeah. And I can still work within that metaphor, within that space, and within consenting to their request. But let them know that eventually that king will demand their children, will demand their taxes, and will be as oppressive to them as
I would be the worst.
As the other nations they've seen around. And so it's that same mindset of like, God's like, okay, no, I'm willing. He does the same thing with Abraham. When Abraham is going to kill Isaac, Abraham is working within the construct of the cultural religion, and he believes because of that he needs to sacrifice his son down in order to show his faithfulness to God, and then God steps in and says, "That's not the God who I am. I don't demand that you kill your son to show the level of your faithfulness to me, and I'm going to offer you an alternative."
Can you imagine what would happen today if someone was like, "You have to kill your son to prove you"?
Well, but that's Genesis. So if we misunderstand Genesis, Genesis is a collection of cultural theological stories that are out there in the culture that the Judeo history says we're going to show you a different God, and they all start from the same narrative, right? So the creation narrative, the flood narrative, Abraham, Seth and Cain, those are all they all start from narratives. If you start those stories in that time period, the people in the culture are going to say, "Oh, I know this story. I know how creation began," but they're going to go to their own religious origin. The Jews were saying, "Yeah, we've heard those stories, and all those stories are birthed out of greed and power and corruption. Let me show you another story." Yeah. And this is the story of a God who works in grace and works in love and mercy, and is actually one that produces life and wants a relationship with you, doesn't want to destroy you. And if you get Brad Jerzak and Brian Zahn are great. They really get into that. Those are a couple of theologians that help to retell those stories. But that's the narrative that we've lost, that gets lost in organized religion, because power is this thing that we want to, right? It's one of the in the sin of fear or anger or envy or whatever that controls us. And there's a better narrative out there, but you got to do the work. And I would say you got to be careful in the institutions that you sit in, because it's easy for them to become corrupt, just like the king would become corrupt. Yeah. God's willing to say, no, it's okay for this institution, but eventually this institution is going to fail you, because it's not the institution that saves you.
Well, don't tell that to people.
I know. So that's scary. So
I need somewhere to go on Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm autographed.
Yeah. So when our church says
Anything is had.
we're not meeting this Sunday, and this is a place for sabbatical rest, like get some rest, sleep in, have brunch with your neighbors, whatever the case is. That's terrifying for people, because they're like, no, I need my box checked. Yeah. And younger. Yeah, it's exactly right. I need people to see. So anyway, we didn't get into our specific stories of sinner and saint, but I think we certainly delved into the topic. Well, I think we certainly delved into that conversation with a little bit of what is the soul, what's the appetite of the soul, and how is it met.
What's your takeaway for today?
My takeaway for today is, well, we certainly offended organized.
Oh, who did?
We certainly offended organized religion.
I did that.
We organized people who were looking for a cocktail and aren't going to get one because we just give a straight pour. But
hey,
you won't be disappointed by this.
Yeah,
you won't be disappointed by this.
If you are looking for a cocktail, up yours. Great whiskey's just fine sometimes.
And we also disappointed people who came over to the YouTube and saw our faces and are like, "Oh no, I got to go back to just."
Boy, that's what they look like.
That's rough. We offended.
We offended people who may or may not have known what the word adjective meant.
You offended me with your whole penis religion analogy. That was offensive to you? Well, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for you to.
Well, I mean, it was blanketed.
I mean,
it's all religions.
It fit.
Not just yours.
It fit. Yeah. But I'm glad you didn't give it a physical representation. I'm glad we didn't go like.
We would have lost all viewers. I can tell you that. They would have been zooming, and they would have been like, I'm out. Well, he has no religion, obviously, so terrific.
So here's the spirit that I'm going to send you out with. You got a straight pour on this. My straight pour on the way out is, may you find the spaces where the appetite of your soul is met, and may you find a downward stream that is easy for those places, so that so the sins of the soul are not fed, and the virtues of your life can be magnified.
Can I give one more of what I just learned?
Yeah.
That it's only episode 31, which means I have like 8 more episodes until I have to do that stupid blast.
You got plenty of time.
Oh, good. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time on A Sinner and Saint Podcast.
this is gonna be a fun conversation with you. Cause I was
About 7 deadly sins?
yeah, I just always I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Because I want the past, right? I want the past to be able to process my emotions and these things, and I was like, oh, you'll offer some good challenging thoughts I had you consider. Yeah, I think so. Like
I've been drunk since Monday, so I don't know. It's one of those things.
Weekend binge become week.
You can't.
Week binge?
Or vacation binge.
Oh,
yeah,
vacation.
Like, you can't stay drunk unless you start first thing in the morning. And I was like, challenge accepted.
Hey, I have a request. I have a request for our listeners. Send us a few rules. I'm gonna belch first, but after that, send us an email of what you like about podcasts and how we can improve. We love getting that feedback. We're really trying to up our game on a few different fronts, and we just need feedback. So we know we've got about 35 listeners roughly to catch each episode. We'd love to hear from you. Introduce yourself. We'd love to know who's out there in our viewing audience, and take that. We've gone global. We're in about 8 different countries, which is weird. And
first of all, for those 35 who are listening regularly, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming back. I don't know what about this you
and
love,
maybe I'm sorry. Maybe I'm sorry. Maybe they're like, well, I'm just coming back because I don't know. But we're glad. So we'd love to hear from you. Give us a little bit of introduction to yourself. And we'd love to just start a relationship beyond this podcast. So,
and just a real quick shout out to Mike. I know you're probably driving to Louisville.
Oh, get it. Be safe. Watch out. They're crazy out there.
Scottsdale has a lot of cops.
We'll see you. See you next week.